Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub podcast,
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
and we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. Modern Expo invites you to Eurosys 2022, the most important trade fair for retail technology in Europe, taking place in Dusseldorf from the 31st of May to the 2nd of June. Modern Expo will present innovative solutions for creating a seamless user experience for the retail of the future, including omnichannel, self-service, click and collect, and more. Marek, it looks like Amazon is consolidating its position as one of the dominant carriers in the US. We were talking before we hit record that the e-commerce behemoth has, I want to say, come from zero. How would you describe it, Marek? Their growth.
You can use any words, but they have come from zero. They started nowhere. I was part of the startup team around 2015 when, yes, they'd already been doing something, but it wasn't really that much of a big deal. And look, over the last couple of years, they've gone from nowhere to being a top three player and, dare I say it, pipping FedEx, the post.
Now, I wanted to ask you about this in terms of, I think it's in terms of volumes, is it that Amazon is?
I think it's in terms, there's various reports out there. A recent one that I saw, let's have a look, suggests that in terms of volume only, and probably the reason is particularly FedEx comes up a lot better in terms of value than volume, probably because of pricing and product mix.
It's an interesting one in the US because there's so often surcharges thrown in as well, whether it's a fuel surcharge or whatever kind of surcharge it may be. The decision by FedEx, was it 2 years ago now or 3 years ago, to part ways or do less business with Amazon? So how does that contrast with the UPS policy, or sort of what is it that the CEO keeps saying? Better, not bigger, I think is the phrase.
That's it, better not bigger. Yeah. At the end of the day, the writing is on the wall, and either the legacy carriers, and frankly, all three US carriers are legacy carriers, whether it's USPS, FedEx, or UPS. Either they see the writing on the wall and they change, or you know what I'm going to say, they fall by the wayside, as did Polaroid, because the market is changing. Customer expectations are changing. Amazon gets it and understands what they need to do. But I really can't see enough. I'm not saying nothing, Ian, but I don't know what your view is. I don't think enough is happening.
Well, there's a couple of things. We've spoken a number of times about the need for the other carriers to match Amazon in terms of customer experience and things like that. And there's the comment as well that Amazon is different to the other carriers because they generate their own volumes, although increasingly they seem to be pitching for other business. Just the other week, it was announced that Amazon Flex drivers will be picking up from selected retailers in malls, if I recall correctly. So it's an interesting mix. But one thing I really wanted to ask you about, which is the trend started by Amazon for retailers to do their own delivery. So if the other giants in American retail, i.e. Walmart and Target, if they are building out their own last mile capability, could we see them vaulting into consideration when it comes to the big players in the last mile?
My view is the world is changing, and Amazon has always been very open to seizing any opportunity, even if it means working with competitors. The whole concept of marketplace is about selling your competitors' items on your website. It came as no surprise to any of us when FBA came into play and the last mile elements of FBA fulfilled by Amazon. And I think, frankly, they will do anything that is logical that could give them a better operational financial position, provided it will help improve customer experience. So I think the thing that would be a hurdle is if bringing someone else on board would mean that an Amazon customer wouldn't get their parcel at peak. So I think they're going to be very clever in that space.
Yeah, and this is just one other thing I wanted to sort of throw into this mix, because this is just talking about parcel volume, some of this research. But in the last couple of weeks, there have been a couple of articles in the media about Amazon subletting its own warehouse space. So it's built out all this capacity in its fulfillment network, in its delivery station network, and the heat has come out a little bit of e-commerce. Is that a way of putting it, perhaps? And they are, I don't want to say scaling back, but not obviously forecasting that they're not going to need all the capacity they've got right now. So there's this element to it. Well, if e-commerce is cooling off, how does someone like Amazon, seems to be very sensitive about the amount it's spending on on delivery. Did you see the figures, Matic? When it's gone from 14%, delivery's gone from 14% of Amazon's costs to 30 something percent. Do you remember this?
But Ian, there's a couple of things. Remember, they want to offer such exceptionally customer-centric delivery. They want to give customer things I don't think the customer even knows he needs, such as ultra-fast delivery, delivery of single items, things that are not efficient. So, but that's Amazon. But what I would say, you started with the point about subletting, let's call it that for want of a better word, warehouse space. Of course, they're going to do it. And I think there's two reasons. It could be that e-commerce isn't growing as fast, and you plan warehouses sometimes a year, sometimes even more in advance, and fulfillment centers or sorting centers even further. They're planned out to have capacity for several years ahead, because you're not going to change a fulfillment center every 2 or 3 years. So it makes sense. It will be interesting to see what happens at peak, because typically any facility will be under capacity or will have fewer items versus capacity up until the last quarter. And then last quarter, everything's going to be full. So I'll be very interested to understand how those arrangements work. Are they very attractive, but in Q1 to 3? And then does Vidania Q4? Or maybe not. Always be about Amazon and Amazon's customer at the end of the day, though.
This question about capacity, it was such a vital question, especially in, say, 2020, and even continuing through 2021, talking about capacity, whether it's in the last mile, or even before that, you had carriers just turning off the tap, saying, we're not going to onboard any more customers. It might be for their own, even for their own 3PL business, saying, we're not going to take on any more customers. We haven't got the capacity to deal with it. So looking at these trends and the growth of Amazon and all of this, is this what you'll be seeing happening come Q4 this year? That Amazon's really just again, for all this talk about opening up its own logistics network to others, offering buy with Prime to other e-commerce websites, will the focus just return to be right? This is all about Amazon come Q4, or is that a betrayal of the marketplace principle, shall we say?
And this is, of course, my speculation, but I think it will always be about Amazon, and customers who are FBA customers will be treated better than non-FBA. So you're going to have Amazon's own product, then FBA, which I think is very close, because the customer actually doesn't often understand there's a difference. He doesn't see that he's buying a non-Amazon product via FBA. He thinks it's an Amazon product in most cases. So I think those groups will be protected. I think there could well also be a scenario where they promote third-party non-fulfilled volumes in areas where they don't have that volume. So perhaps not in the biggest cities, in places where they actually need the pipeline to be filled. But I have no doubt whatsoever at peak time, they're going to protect Amazon and FBA customers above all else.
And just one last thing, because we've got about a minute left. Amazon has been, it used to always just focus on the high density areas, right, where it had the most people, but increasingly reaching its delivery tentacles. Do you have delivery tentacles? You all know what I mean. Out into sort of regional and rural USA. Now, this is an intriguing development, especially when you consider what Amazon's doing in other countries. Will it expand its delivery footprint so that it's less reliant upon, say, in this instance, the US Postal Service? A quick comment on that, Matic?
In my view, makes a lot of sense. They will always have some dependence on third parties because, as we discussed before, they're never going to want to have everything in one basket because things can go wrong. As we've discussed in the past, it's not unknown for them to have a strike. And they're closer to, I think they have unionization now in the US at Amazon. So I think they have to be careful, and there will always be an alternative. But yes, they're going to, in my view, expand their footprint. Makes a lot of sense. And to be fair, particularly in the US, I would argue they're doing it a lot better than the legacy carriers. I remember when I was there, they basically threw the book out of the window and said, forget what was done in the past. We want to do it right. Let's reinvent the wheel. And I think they even went to an extreme that I didn't feel was right, because I'd have said, let's take best-in-class benchmarks. But no, they said, no, we're starting from the beginning. We're going to do it properly. Fresh start.
Thanks for watching this video on YouTube. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so that we appear in your YouTube feed. You get a little notice on your phone or something like that when it says we've published a new video. And it helps us keep these videos free for you. Marta Krzyzewski, thanks for being part of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everybody.